So, on to the next page. We hold the awards in Singapore in March, so the winners will be announced at a big gala ceremony on the 22nd of March in Singapore. But we have plenty of time before then. Our deadline for entries is the 25th of November, and we're open to entries from media agencies, media owners, brands direct, ad tech, marketing specialists or mobile specialists, for example, anyone that's involved in media and branding communications. We're also truly representative of the region, so our entrants and winners will come from all over Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, China, India, so it really is open to all. 25th November is the deadline for entries, and the shortlist will be announced on the 9th of February. I mentioned we run a series of festival medias across the world, which you can see along the bottom there. So we have lots of experience in this process. We've taken our learnings from previous entrants, judges, to really refine the process and what the categories will be for the next edition. We also have on board Margot Torres, who's the Executive Vice President and Deputy Managing Director for McDonald's Philippines, who will be our chair of the jury for the next edition. She's an amazing lady, very insightful, truly experienced, and she herself was part of our jury last time with some brilliant campaigns like McDonald's McTollbooth. So on to the entry process. It's a two-stage process. The first stage is a written entry. It's fairly brief. It's around 800 words in total. It's done online where you have specific fields to enter, including your name and contact details. And then the entries are divided up into 5 main blocks. Your objectives, which is really a key highlight sentence of what you're trying to do. Insight, strategy, execution, and results. So each entry should be based on a campaign case study that can be divided up in that way. And there's a word limit on every section. You may also supply 2 supporting images. They should be JPEGs. They do not need to be a mood board or anything specifically designed. They're purely to support the entry and help illustrate your point. It's all submitted and also judged online. So you must submit your entries on time before the judging starts. No entries can be accepted once judging has begun. Once the judging has completed on the written entries, we take the best scoring campaigns from that stage and they reach the shortlist. We will contact any shortlisted entrants direct to say that you've made the shortlist, and it's at that point we ask you to create a video for the final jury. The final jury meets in Singapore in March and will be looking at your videos. It's really important the videos are a standalone piece and don't rely on information on your written entry, because the final jury really does spend the majority of their time looking at the video and may not even read your written entry. But we deliberately break this up into 2-stage entering so that you can get your written entries done first and see the level of your success before you spend your time and resource on creating a video. So here are the deadlines again to recap. If you're super organised and you've got your cases lined up with your client approval all done, submit them by Monday the 31st of October, and there is a lower rate for entering. The final deadline, however, which might give you a bit more time and space, is Friday the 25th of November. I mentioned the shortlist announcement would be on the 9th of February, and once that's happened, if you're on the shortlist, you get about a month to create your video for the next stage. But focusing on the written entry, you must get approval from the client, and the form will request you to put in your client's name and contact details so we can also cross-reference that approval has been done. The 2 images must be JPEG. If they're not JPEG or you don't have 2, then unfortunately our system has a problem accepting your entries. So please make sure there's 2 images and they're JPEG format. There is a word limit. Again, please respect the word limit. The system won't accept your entry if you go over the word limit. So if you have a problem technically submitting your campaign, do check you're within the word limit and you have your 2 JPEG images, otherwise there could be issues. Another thing to bear in mind when you're entering online is that if you have spent rather a long time on that particular browser, you may be logged out and then find you can't progress or it's difficult. Any problems, open up in a new browser and log in again. Can I just remind you to put yourselves on mute if you're joining now? We're just recapping the written entry process. Do put in your company name and country. We also ask for a second contact from your company on the form. This is really in case you're sick or traveling or you leave the company. It's important we have the contact to let you know if you've made it to the next stage. And of course, please make sure your entries are on time. This is really so that there's some time at our end to check that everything's working and in order, and we can get your entries to the judges so they can be reviewed and judged. Any late entries, we just can't guarantee that we put before the judges. We have to give everyone a fair chance and not extra time. So the common mistakes on a written entry, really look at your category selection carefully. I'll run through them shortly. Our rule here is that us as organisers or the judges cannot move your entry. It's really important that you read the category criteria and you make the appropriate choice. We don't move them for you. So really make sure you've read the entry criteria. Judges will be doing the same, really looking at the descriptions and judging your work against the description for that particular category. So you may find that you may enter your campaign in more than one category, but I would advise that you tailor the written entry accordingly to the category you've selected. Another top tip is that don't assume the judges know the details of your campaign or even some of the cultural or brand implications. So for example, if it's not a huge global brand, do just quickly summarize what your brand is. Is it a dairy consumer product? Is it a leading electronics manufacturer? Just a very brief less than one sentence description of what your brand is. If you're making reference to any national or religious holidays, then do explain the significance of those. Our juries come from all over the region. So they need to understand if there's any particular nuance in your market, be it cultural or for the sector, for example. Moving on to the sections of the campaign. Objectives is really asking for, it's a headline sentence. In the past, judges have really said, oh, I really want to know up front why this campaign is good. Don't wait until the end to stun them with your results and how great it was. Say up front what was the objective of the campaign and the point of doing it. Please note there's no marks or judges' points for the objectives. It's merely an indicator to them, the meaning behind your campaign. Insight, however, is the understanding of your marketplace. So, and be very careful that you're giving insight the depth that it needs. So, for example, some entrants have been guilty in the past of saying something that's maybe a little bit generic, like we wanted to target 18 to 24-year-olds, so we sponsored a music concert. Making a broad assumption that young people like music, judges won't necessarily be impressed that that's an insight. And on to results. Results are very important. Apart from our effectiveness category, where the results take more importance, the results are actually as equally important to the insight, strategy, execution, and results. So bear in mind, they should all have equal weighting. They all have similar word counts, so treat them all as important. The results, though, judges will look at, obviously it's one thing to be wowed by a creative campaign, but it's another to know that it was actually effective and how well it worked for the brand. We have a lot of senior brand marketers that will be in the room or on the jury. They in particular will want to know the impact and the business impact for the brand. So they tend to be slightly less impressed with some of the more creative things, and they're really looking for the true results. Do put your results in context. When you have an increase, it's often good for the judges to know what was your base to begin with, otherwise the increase isn't really in any context. Perhaps you've got ROI results, so rather than just stating sales percentage increase, include the ROI as well. As one judge said recently, the sales increase is great, but if they've spent also a lot of money to achieve that, that's less impressive. Other results you could include that maybe are less statistical based is if the activity has been repeated elsewhere or repeated again across the company is another indicator it was effective. But do put them in context, which could be for the sector or the brand. So is it the best results the brand has ever had, or is it something that's new or a first or the best for that particular region or country? Do highlight to the judges, don't assume they'll know the industry standards for your country. And again, don't be late with your entries. There needs to be some time to check that everything's working and in order before we pass them to judges, and we need to make sure that happens. So top tips to recap: do read the criteria and enter the right category. So think very carefully about the categories you're going to enter. And you're very, very welcome to get in contact with myself or my team, who can give you plenty of advice on the categories, what the judges are looking for, and where your particular campaign may best fit. Clearly outline the challenge and objectives. So be very clear what you're trying to do. Grab attention at the start. I say don't wait until the very end to wow the judges, particularly on the written entries. The shortlist jury have hours and hours worth and hundreds of written entries to get through. They're usually allocated 1 or 2 categories each, and they're doing a lot of reading, and you need to grab their attention and really stand out amongst all those other hundreds of entries. Be clear and concise. It's often nice to maybe get someone else in your team or someone not related to the campaign at all to read your written entry and check that it's clear and understandable to someone who's not familiar with it. The art of storytelling. I'm sure I don't need to tell you this. This is your specialisms. But again, an engaging story really helps the judge understand and to pay attention to what you're saying. And again, results, put them in context. If you've outlined what the objectives were at the start and what you were trying to achieve, again, make sure that relates to the results at the end, or there's a connection between the two. Often entrants forget to make a link and the results are unrelated or don't seem to bear out what the brand wanted to achieve in the first place. And I would also suggest that you have a look at the previous winning campaigns. You can find them all on creamglobal.com. You'll find there both the written entry and the videos for all the shortlisted entries and winners. So really take a look and you'll start to get a very clear picture of what makes them stand out. Onto the videos. The videos are only needed at second stage, so only if you reach the shortlist. The videos must work as a standalone, so don't rely on the judges reading your entry as well as watching the video. At the final jury room, days are spent really watching the videos back to back. There's no allotted time to read the written entries, and there just physically isn't time. So the shortlist judges, they may have read some of the entries. They couldn't possibly have read all of them. We usually have about 200 that reach the shortlist. So really make sure your video contains all the details it needs. We've even had examples where the video has left out some of the results that were stated in the written entry, and it was only through the due diligence of a particularly attentive judge who spotted it. So don't rely on them doing that work for you. Include all the details. Do summarise your campaign, what it was you were trying to achieve and what you did. And although it's difficult, and I appreciate the resource needed, if you can tailor your video and if you are entering it in multiple categories, it really is great and much more engaging if you can amend the video, if possible, to that particular category. Your video should not feature any company names, either of yourself or any other contributors. And that's really to help minimize any potential bias in the judging process. So the judges do not know, unless they happen to be aware of it, they're not told, and they will not know whose work it is. And to be as open as possible to all the nationalities that take part, we do request that both the written entry and the video are in English, or the video should at least have English subtitles. So expect the jury to be English speaking. And very important also, the video should be only 2 minutes. I'll often get people requesting and saying, is it okay if it's 2 minutes 30 or 2 minutes 20? All I can say is juries tend to be quite strict. We want to keep the process fair and make sure everyone has the same time allowed. And if it's over 2 minutes, the jury will often just cut it off at 2 minutes and then risk losing some of the important information you wanted to get across. So 2 minutes only for the video. So now I'd like to show you some videos. I'm going to change over my microphone and just check that you guys can hear it. I'm going to play the video and make a few comments at the end. This one in particular is from Malaysia, for Telecom Malaysia. And we picked this one because it shows a really good structure in the video. And this one, a gold for best use of content, which is one of our current categories. I'll also pause a little bit at the end because I realise that people are on different broadband speeds and the video will run at different paces for you all. So I'll give a little pause at the end and then continue.
lah.
Mereka betul lah Zura ni.
Bawa bertenang dek. Saya ni bukannya nak rompak adik. Taksi!
Tapi saya 1 sen pun tak ada.
Habis duit saya buat tambah.
Orang yang susah lagi kan memberi.
So I hope that video is finished playing for all of you. Apologies for the sound issue at the beginning. I think you could see it was very clearly structured and the story was clear. It's also a great example of gamification actually, and we do have a new best use of gamification category, which I'll explain a little later. But very clear story from the beginning, results very clear, and the storytelling, you could see exactly the interaction with the consumer and what it achieved. So on to another video now, which was for Suncorp Bank, Home Lens Deliver. This one's from Starcom MediaVest Group in Australia and won gold for the Smart Use of Data Award. And this just goes to show that even something as dry as data can be explained in a very engaging way that even those people that aren't so familiar with the data can understand.
You're on the busy train commute home. You know you have to book a time with the bank to organise a home loan, but who has time for that? We made sure you had time with tech that went well beyond location-based tracking, tech that changed the concept of bank hours to bring the bank to the customer. Suncorp Bank is from another state in Australia, so trying to compete with the big 4 banks in Sydney with only 1/4 of the budget, similar rates and a limited presence with a small amount of branches is a big challenge. But they do have 5 mobile bank lenders that weren't hiding behind a closed branch. These lenders were on the road and on call. We just didn't know where they were until now. To show off our lenders, we knew it would be most powerful where it was least expected. So we found our customers when they were on the commute home, outside traditional banking hours. We partnered with AdShell to target commuters with every digital outdoor panel across the entire Sydney rail network and prompt an immediate response. Throughout the day, it tracked the lender's movements with a heat map, and if customers could see a mobile lender near their home, they could make a booking and that lender would arrive for an appointment that very night. The tech was crucial in overcoming traditional network lag barriers, and we created an app called Home Loans on Call that tracked mobile lenders via their mobile phone GPS. Importantly, the information went to a server that was on a custom-built digital network that allowed our data to go direct to outdoor display panels instead of going back and forth across other networks. The result was instant updates to identify the location of a lender. Over the 3-month campaign, home loan lodgements increased a massive 234% year-on-year in New South Wales and achieved mobile lender lead generation of plus 171% year-on-year, and giving our humble team of 5 scale in a true media first, fusing real-world staff locations, individual data on an exclusive network and out-of-home impact, live.
I think you agree that's a really impressive campaign, very innovative in its use of geolocation, and it was very clear at the start, the business challenge. So They were a small bank, they didn't have the reach, they didn't have the setup, made the challenge really clear, and then they were innovative in how they dealt with that challenge with some amazing results too. So hopefully you can see just the clarity of the story, the innovation and the impact that will help make a winning entry. On to the next one. Now this one, some people say to me, why don't certain campaigns win? On the final jury, I have to say that the judges will focus on the positives and they will petition why something should win. So they don't tend to run down or be negative about things, but just to be clear, any campaign that makes it to the shortlist, you're already excellent. And sometimes the judges have to be very, very, what we would say, split hairs and be very detailed in what they're looking for in order to try and choose and make some choice between what's been submitted. So I'm going to show you now another case study that did make it to the shortlist, but it didn't win a trophy. So again, it's still very good, but it just didn't quite make it. And I'll play the video and we'll have a few thoughts as to why in a minute. So let's get this playing for you.
Now when I was a little boy, at the age of 5, I had something in my pocket, keeps a lot of folks alive. Now I'm a man of 21. You know, baby, we can have a lot of fun. I'm a man, style and hey, and all you pretty women stand in line. I can make love to you, baby, in an hour's time. I'm a man, I style am a going back down to Kansas City. Bring back the second cousin.
So I think you can see that that was still a really good campaign case study, good quality. In fact, it's won lots of other awards. So there's absolutely nothing particularly negative about it. Our particular jury just found that they weren't clear on what the business challenge was. Why was that campaign done? What was the brand trying to achieve? Also, it did state some good results, but the judges felt that the targets weren't clear. Again, this really came down to the judges' lack of understanding of what the brand was trying to achieve and why, and then the results it did get, how could the judges rate whether they were good or not. Often judges will bring their own experiences to the jury to know if a result is good or not. But again, if you can put it into context as to whether that's good for the brand or the sector or the country, for example, it really helps them to have an indicator of why a result is particularly good. So for example, if results are, say, 2% in sales increase in my country, the UK, for example, a jury might think that's actually pretty good because the UK is a very developed market and it's a fairly small population. But if it was a 2% increase in, say, India or China, which have huge, more populations, then that's perhaps a less good result. Now I'm going to move on to our campaign of the year, and again you'll see the difference in the storytelling. You'll also have noticed that some of the campaigns use music, some of them will have a narration or a voiceover. I don't think there's a particularly favoured way of doing it. A mix is good. So yes, there's no particular winning style in terms of the narration or graphics that are used on the screen. So this one is the KFC Hot and Cheesy Burger by Malaysia, and this one in several categories, including our campaign of the year.
Hello viewers, I'm Hot and Cheesy, and you are, let me guess, you're gorgeous, right? That's why we didn't create one film on YouTube, we created 100.
Hot and cheesy.
Hey sunshine, you better say sorry because you stole my heart.
Hot and cheesy.
Pero tulalilu tiamo, mi tiamo, mwa, banana. Ah. And that's how we charmed our way into the hearts and stomachs of Malaysians. And we hope you fall in love with us too, judges.
So what a brilliant storytelling throughout that campaign. Clearly laid out the challenge, then what the strategy and the execution was, and at the end the results. It mentioned some of the highest results that KFC had achieved, a record for Malaysia. So it really has everything to indicate to the judges why it was such a successful campaign. They were also blown away with the fact that had produced over 100 creatives for this campaign. So they were stunned by the amount of effort that would take. And very, very engaging video, I think you agree, very popular, and really clever use of data. So we do have a data category that this would be perfect for. So creative use of data, tying in what people are searching for and then delivering the creative that suits that search criteria. So I've mentioned some of the categories. We do have 9 new categories this year. Firstly, our categories that fall into our media section. You'll have a full description of all of these categories on our website, but I'll just recap for you quickly now our new ones. Best use of traditional media. We have there's a lot of emphasis in both the press and even our own categories on digital, but actually traditional is still very important, still takes a large amount of media spend. And in particular, we've seen some really great out-of-home campaigns over the last year or so. So this is really to recognise the benefit of using traditional media. That doesn't mean to say that it can't have used some element of digital, or it might even be a digital out-of-home billboard, for example. As long as you can ensure that traditional is at the heart of the campaign and that you wouldn't have been able to achieve the campaign without using your chosen traditional channel. Our other new one, it is very reflective of a trend right now, which is best use of an influencer. So have you used a YouTube star, for example? It could be a celebrity or a vlogger or blogger. Who have you used in your campaign to help raise awareness of the brand and their purpose and really impact the consumer? So it's most likely to be a digital influencer. They don't have to be famous per se, but they are probably going to be some kind of notable character. It could even be a politician or someone notable within the industry, just who's got the influence to broaden the message and to reach your target audience. This is our content section. A couple of new categories here too. Best use of real-time marketing. Last year we had a very specific category on the use of Twitter. This time it's really broadening out for other platforms too. So be it Facebook Messenger or Periscope or Twitter, for example. What are you using to react to the audience using real-time information? Now it could be that this is a very spontaneous act. Maybe you're taking part in a conversation that started with your current customers, or maybe there's an event that has happened or unexpected event, or it could be pre-planned. So for example, in the UK, when William and Kate had the first royal baby, there was a huge amount of activity all ready to go as soon as that moment happened. The agencies were still using real-time information to inform their campaigns, but they'd done a lot of the preparation beforehand. As long as you're using real-time information. And best branded content creation. This is about the content that is specifically created for that brand and how it's used. So what's the storytelling for the brand? And that's not to be confused with best use of content. Best use of content, the content does not have to be original. It doesn't have to have been purpose made for the brand, but it's more how is it displayed or used. So have you used native ad campaigns, sponsored editorial, featured videos, for example? Whereas the Best Branded Content Creation Award is all about the content itself. How does it fit with the brand values, the strategy? How does it meet the marketing challenge, whether it's digital or offline? But in particular, think about how that content creation has been used across the media channels and the storytelling that's used across different screens, for example, and the customer experience that's enjoyed as a result. At technology, we have 2 new categories. One is the best use of gamification. We saw the video from Malaysia earlier. Gamification is an increasing trend we're seeing in cases. It's a brilliant way of brands to engage. The campaign doesn't need to be an actual video game or part of a video game. It could be, but but equally it could just be something that uses game elements, whether it's points or a reward system, something that uses the gaming element to make a success for the brand. And best use of technology, this could be new technology like VR or AR, so virtual reality or augmented reality. It could use the Internet of Things, or just how has technology and its specific benefits helped the campaign. Again, always think on these specialisms, and this counts for mobile as well, for example. What are the properties of that channel or that medium, and how has that made the campaign work? One of the criticisms we've had on best use of mobile category is that the campaigns sometimes are not mobile first. So the agency may have used mobile to help amplify a message and get the message out, but that message could have been spread by any means, social media or billboards or newspapers. You know, what is it specifically about mobile that has helped? So the Suncorp example using geolocation is a great example of how using mobile was very key to making that a success. And finally, these are our insight categories. Judges are increasingly very conscious of insight and the importance of insight. So really give your insight some depth. How do you understand your audience? What is it that they particularly want or need? A real deeper understanding of the market and how you use that to then enhance the brand's positioning. In particular, it might be how your insight affects the way the brand is marketed. Best not-for-profit campaign. This is purely for charity or government agency work. So it's not brand work, it's not brands doing good. This is real, this has come from the judges who, we have a utility public service award, and they would often get to a point where they'd say, well, this fizzy drinks manufacturer has done a brilliant CSR campaign on saving water, for example, and I love this campaign, but it's really tricky to choose that over a campaign that's for a cancer charity. So it tries to separate that argument between hearts and minds. So charity-related campaigns should be in the best not-for-profit sector, and brands doing good or with particularly excellent CSR campaigns should be in the Utility Public Service Award. Another new category here is the best local execution of a brand. How has a brand, it could be a local brand, it could be a global brand, but what are the, again, this relates to insight, what are the cultural nuances, what is the understanding of your marketplace, either the country or a particular town or people or segment of the audience? How has that impacted your campaign, and how have you shaped it to make it different to address those differences and challenges for that particular audience? Again, another element of success here you could indicate is that if your techniques have then been rolled out elsewhere, either within the country or other countries, is a really good indication. But just be very clear on your understanding of the audience and how you've addressed that in your execution of the campaign. And the other new one here is the creative use of data award. Again, the UN Malaysia example, the KFC hot and cheesy burger is a brilliant example there. So where they use the data, in that case search data, and it affected the creative. So we're really looking at how data has helped make some intelligent, informed decisions on the running of the campaign, either before the campaign starts or perhaps even in real time. So we do have Grand Prix categories too. These are done on a calculation basis. So you do not enter these. Campaign of the year is awarded to the campaign that has performed the best in all the other categories. So we see how many times your campaign has been shortlisted, how many trophies it's won, and then we calculate campaign of the year from that. Agency of the year, this is the particular office that has done the best in all of our categories. So how many times have you been shortlisted? How many wins do you have? We also take into account how many different campaigns you have and for how many different brands. And that's really trying to celebrate and reward the breadth and excellence of your work. So if you've just got one amazing campaign for one brand, you're less likely to win here. It's about the different campaigns you've done and if possible for different brands. And finally, Agency Network of the Year. This is how all of the country offices in the same network have performed. And again, there's various calculations that involved, including number of times shortlisted, trophy wins, the brands that have, the variety of brands that have won, the variety of campaigns that have won, and the variety of offices. So this is really rewarding the breadth of excellence across the network and across the region. So it doesn't have to be within the same country. So here are those key dates again. If you're nice and early, you can enjoy the reduced entry rate and submit your written entry, so written entry only, by 31st of October. Otherwise, you can submit your written entry for the final deadline, which is the 25th of November. You can actually start your written entry anytime now. We're open now. The website is open. You can start loading up your campaigns or half write them or put in some details, save and come back to it. You can actually go back and complete or amend your entry any time up until the deadline. Once the deadline is passed, you can make no more changes, but you can certainly start putting your work there now. Once they're judged, we announce the shortlist on the 9th of February. Again, a reminder, it's really important you put your contact details on your entry as well as a second point of contact should we need it. So we can tell you directly that you've made the shortlist. We'll also put it out on social media and on our website. So keep your eyes open on 9th of February. And from then you get about a month. If you are shortlisted, so only for shortlisted entrants, you get about a month to work on your video. Remember, it should reflect your written entry and all the details and make it as engaging as possible for judges who, especially if they're having to watch it a few times, if you've been lucky enough to be shortlisted several times across different categories. The video submission deadline is the 10th of March. And again, I would ask that you really do meet that deadline. We will need to check that all the videos technically work. You know, it's really important, of course, for judging. Without a video, your work can't be judged in the final jury room. So it's very important that everything's working and ready by that date. And then finally, we'll be having the judging in Singapore, and we will announce the winners at an event in Singapore on the 22nd of March. So certainly we'll be inviting you all to come along, celebrate, and hopefully get up on stage and collect a trophy and celebrate your win. Here are our contacts. Our final jury is looking quite full at the moment, but we still have some places left on the shortlist jury. If you'd like to nominate any senior colleagues or even clients, we have lots of clients do judging. Shortlist judging is done online, sadly over the Christmas period and a little bit into January, but still judges love seeing all the work. They really get a sense of what's working well in the marketplace, gives them lots of new ideas, so it's very popular to do. So if you have anyone that you'd like to be a judge, please forward their details on to Lisa, lisa.coromila@c2 and if you have any queries on your entries, do feel free to contact myself or Fanny, who's listed here, fanny.nico@c2.cc. We're very happy to advise on which categories you should enter, more feedback, any queries, technical, how to use the entry site, Hopefully it's straightforward, but we're here to help. Do have a look at the entry site. That's where you'll physically upload your entry. And the website address there, the awards website address, awards.festivalofmedia.com/Asia. That is where you'll find all of the descriptions of the categories. Again, do read those so carefully. That's the most common mistake. And I know lots of people ask me. It's a bit like doing your homework. Read the question, write your answer in terms of submitting your entry, then read the question again and check that you've answered the question. It's the most common mistake, and I know it's easy to say and take for granted, but it is the most common mistake made. So do go on the website, look at the category descriptions. We've also got a top tips document there, which features the hot and cheesy burger campaign with some comments from the team behind that, how they went about putting that case study together, and some tips from the judges on there. Otherwise, do go to creamglobal.com for other examples of winning work, and I'm happy to send you around some links of that after this with some emails and links so you can see all that information direct. I think I've answered all of the questions I got in advance, so the clear do's and don'ts from award-winning entry. I hope by showing you some of the videos today, you've seen why they were successful and what makes an engaging story. There's no specific theme on the Festival of Media Asia Awards. You can see the categories do focus on media, insight, technology and content. I would advise you also do look at the new categories. They tend to be less popular at the start, so that's quite a good tip. They may have less competition than some of the more established ones, but do look where you can best enter. I would love to say enter everything, but I think it's usually best to be selective and really choose what best suits your campaign, and then create the case study to fit that category. Even if you're entering the same campaign in multiple categories, which you're allowed to do, there's no limit, be clear as to why it should win that particular category. You might have an amazing piece of work, and judges sometimes will be kicking themselves because they love the work, but they don't think it suits that category and it won't win. So do make sure it's relating back to the category. And that's all my advice for the day. I hope you found that useful, and I'll send through some links for you. And do get in contact if you have any further questions. We look forward to seeing your entries, and we wish you all the best. Goodbye.